Good evening, you wonderful, lovable people. It's me, Know Nothing Attorney. I know nothing, so you can too. Because it's only in embracing that we know nothing that we can actually learn anything. I feel like my mic is too low. I need to be able to speak into it without bending over. It's only in embracing that we know nothing that we can actually learn anything, and that's what we're here to do. And as I promised in my Discord, because wonderfully, there's actually been some conversation going on the Discord. I'd love to see the Discord grow like that, even with disagreements going on therein. I'm happy to see it happening. Disagreements mean we're talking. Last night, we had an actual multi-hour debate on gender on voice chat. That was fantastic. I re-listened to it earlier today. I think I'm going to post the whole thing as a video, and then maybe I can make some more short content out of it. Because, man, there were just some good zingers in that one. I made myself laugh multiple times. Um, but mostly I was happy to find, because I only walked away from that conversation with the fresh memory of the end of it. And by that point, I had gotten pretty frustrated, beating my head against a wall, because we kept having the same conversation over and over again, and it was like we had dried up the well of every single argument that he had, and we had somehow locked into a single one. And his point was that he wanted to collapse gender identity and gender expression into a single idea, and through that claim that you could have the same effect by just using the words masculine and feminine instead of distinguishing between masculine and feminine and man and woman. But the problem is that completely ignores the schemas that people have for gender. And it's not a choice that people have these schemas. It's fundamental to our identities. It is not a choice we make. We end up determining our schema for men and women, and we end up fitting ourselves into those without ever thinking about it. And that is a real part of human identity. And then outside of that core structural identity issue, remain other factors of what are considered masculine or feminine characteristics that in our schemas are not load-bearing when it comes to figuring out which gender we fall into. And he wanted to say, if you identify a bunch of feminine attributes, you can just be feminine without being a woman. You can be a feminine male. But the problem with this is that if you have the load-bearing factors for your own personal schema, you kind of have assigned yourself subconsciously to the group that is a woman, and meanwhile, in your gender expression, have a wide array of characteristics that would make you, based on your own schema, masculine, and even to other people masculine. And in that sense, you could be a masculine woman. Man, it really did search for IQ. Good to see you again in YouTube chat. Relying on you to become the new person who holds down YouTube chat as a regular. So we kept cycling on that one point by the end of the conversation. At that point, I just had to recognize that the conversation was over. He kept wanting to say that I was saying the same thing as him, and then I would point out I'm not, because it comes down to the very essential gender schema. And he just wanted to go, yeah, right, there's that point. And I'm like, okay, so you recognize that you and I are not talking about the same thing. And then he would just circle back to, but we are, except that he would then have to once again recognize that we're not, and would just keep going. And at that point, I called it. So, right, I'm recapping what happened. I did see Discord today. I am Juris Moctorate. That's my casual handle. So we are going to open with the PragerU video. You got him to acknowledge that in the Twitch chat before we started? You got him to acknowledge which part? That there's a difference between gender identity and gender expression? He was a troll in the loosest sense of the word. Evil alien robot, dude, I can't believe that you're here today. That is heartbreaking. We had a real debate last night. It was a real one. He was a troll in the loosest sense of the word, in the sense that he knew that he was never going to budge from his position, but I don't think that makes it... At Central Time, it was 4:30 to 5 a.m. I let myself go way too long. He started off arguing in sort of good faith, But as I re-listened to the debate today, I disproved every single point that he brought up. And then it just got to the end where I think it was definitely bad faith, where he's like, well, I have no other argument to run to but this one, which was really the weakest argument he had to begin with, which was like, well, can't we just agree we're talking about the same thing and we can just call it masculine and feminine? Yeah, right. It was all he had left to hold on to. It was desperation. Search for IQ says the whole conversation seemed at the start he wanted understanding, but then it seemed he wanted to just hate on other people's self-identity. Right, which is where so the reason I was recapping this is, you know, my brand, my personal philosophy is like, I got worried by the end of that. I was like, did I maintain being reasonable, or did I just default to being like rude to this person? And it hurt me even more that as I started listening to the debate, I talked to this guy about the fact, I'm like, I'm one of the friendliest people you can talk to. So you are safe to talk to me about this stuff. But then it got to the point where we just kind of agreed that it was that we were talking about the difference between his inconvenience and other people's like increased mortality rate. And he was like, well, I think that inconvenience is more important. And I was like, okay, so you're just being I didn't start off calling him a piece of shit. I called him not a rude person. It's similar to I calling him, I'm like, okay, so you can just be a rude person, an uncaring person, that's fine. You can just say that, you can own that, that's fine. I'm not going to make you support people. You are just going to be an asshole. And then as it became more clear that he was just going to stick by those guns and say, yes, my inconvenience is more important, then I got a little bit more rude over time. I'm like, so you can just be a piece of shit. You just are a piece of shit. That's it. And then we got to the point where I said that he was a disease, which was good. Where he said that he tried to come back to calling trans identity a disorder, and I was like, again, it's not a disorder. And he's like, but you said that it increases their suicide rate, and I'm like, but it's not being trans that does that. It's you. You are the disorder. You are a disease. And that's about as the rudest I got to him. You said him being comfortable was more than other people's same rights. I said that him being comfortable was, or I pointed out to him that was his position. Maddie, you went full Daft Punk on him. Harder, better, faster, stronger. That's why I rely on you. You're the counterbalancing force in my stream. His whole issue, once it got fully boiled down, was what he didn't want to deal with trans people in dating apps. That was his best example of harm to himself. This harms me because I can't find the people I want to in dating apps. Which I was thinking about when I was re-listening to the debate today, and I was just like, so what you're saying is, if the existence of other people is in your way, the best solution is getting rid of those people, not having those people. Whereas the actual solution to that, if there was conflict in that case, if there was, not just what's the word I'm looking for? De minimis conflict, is you would end up with a dating app that required people to like state their preferred sexes, and you have to like note what your sex is in the profile. That's all that would be required. Search for IQ says something similar, not verbatim, was like him being uncomfortable outweighed other people also being comfortable to he wouldn't budge from him having a level of humility. Yeah. Yeah. It was like him being uncomfortable outweighed other people having an increased rate of suicidality because of the dismissal of their identity. It's not just their discomfort. It is a statistically provable increased rate of suicidality. So, yeah, it takes a real piece of shit. Yeah, I am talking about the debate last night. That was one of the really good zingers that I laughed at re-listening to it when I said the other people being on the dating apps doesn't decrease the number of women doesn't change the number of women you find attractive. There's still going to be the same number of women that you find attractive. Actually, no, wait. It is possible that it would increase the number of women you find attractive because you're attracted to some femboys. People he would describe as femboys. He also said a majority of people don't ask others for pronouns, but Facebook literally has like over 70 pronouns you can choose from, so that point wasn't true, right? Also, this desperation to refer to what most people think. But don't they do that already? Like M seeking F, isn't that a thing already? I mean, I know I have not looked at a dating app in a long time. When most people say M seeking F, I don't think most people tend to be referring to sex in that occasion. I think they tend to be talking about gender, but you know, it's important to just be clear in communication. And really, that's the complaint, is I don't want to have to be clear in my communication. Yeah, sounds like a righty. Did they meet someone trans? I don't know. He was upset. But okay, Shadow Wolf is here, so we've got the important players involved. Let's get to what I said I was going to open the stream with, which is the PragerU video. And we can dissect a little bit of good old-fashioned PragerU dishonesty. There's some people who don't abide by those filters, like they'll deliberately lie or obfuscate about their profiles, but those are just individuals being dicks. I mean, there are also trans people that don't want to be clear about their sex in profiles because it opens them up to an increased chance of violence. So oftentimes, transgender people like to get to know somebody first before they open up to them about being trans. PragerU's channel is super gross to me, especially the kids' videos. Kids' videos are disturbing. The weather channel, no, I may have missed that one. You guys were going off in the Discord. I don't know how I feel about having Nazi salutes in my introduction channel. I did see my friend post a Chinese opera? What is going on here? Ooh, piece of candy. Oh my god, Jesus, y'all posted so much today. Oh, no, I did see, I saw the discussion on your link about how PragerU is propagating climate misinformation. But I'm sure that we're going to get into a little bit of this with our PragerU dissection here in just a second. But it seemed like this got through to Shadow Wolf a little bit. I did notice that. Good work, Maddie. You recently became a fan of a VTuber your daughter pointed you to after your health? Joseph McCarthy. Lasagna, what are you doing? Are you being extremely cute? Yeah. Yeah, you are. Maddie posted factual evidence like ass. Cannot argue with fact. Oh, Shadow Wolf, I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm sure you are, at least to some degree, aware that that puts you in a very precarious situation when it comes to being prone to disinformation online. The more you get sucked into the online sphere, the more in danger you are of that. The internet just sucks in general. It's a dangerous, dangerous place. I can't believe how much discussion I had to have with that guy about what disorders are. Oh, come on. Open the link. There we go. This is not the link I thought it was. That's another Maddie link. Maddie being too useful, too helpful out there. Okay, now I've got my fascism video up. Still on the right side of the dirt, and I take everything, even what Maddie hit me with today, with a grain of salt. That's great. That's a good thing to be. Be cynical. Be wary. Yeah, some of us have shitty parents. Some of us have parents that probably killed people with their role in redistricting certain states. Well, the step, I'm going to tell you, Shadow Wolf, the next step to growth when it comes to political awareness is you can't just stop at I don't trust mainstream news media anymore. You figure out when to trust mainstream news media. You figure out how to trust that a story is verified and that multiple sides are reporting on the same thing. Right, trust but verify. You don't always have time to verify. So you can loosely trust. M4F was like on Craigslist before pronouns were a socially known construct. Yep, that's true. And as I put it to Tim last night, you're not going to hear a lot of lefties say this, but I am a lefty that would point out that you can say man and woman to refer to both sex and gender. You can say male and female to refer to both sex and gender. You can say masculine and feminine to refer to both sex, gender, and gender expression. It's all a matter of what you're talking about at the time, and we don't have to be confused about it. You can generally know what you're talking about, and in occasions that you don't, you can still clarify. That's right, Shadow Wolf. So, like, the AP is generally trustworthy. So you can at least have a baseline trust that when you see a headline from the AP, you can at least know that that is a factual accounting of a thing that is happening. It might not cover all of the facts of the thing, but at least it's happening. Okay. Let's jump over to this page. This is left over from last night. Let's poison the well a little bit. How does that look? I'm thinking I need to shrink it down a little bit more. Oh, no, I need to change that a little bit more. There we go. Don't want to lead people on. We're not looking at some of their like most dramatic, exciting examples of how they're terrible. I love, actually, Maddie, I have a guilty pleasure in responding to those prompts from people. Like when the trolls came in and they were like, so if you could go back in time, you would kill baby Hitler, right? And I'm just like, no. Now what are you going to do? I mean, that's a true statement of my belief. I would not kill a child. I don't understand why that's so surprising. But but I love engaging with those. It is fun. Okay, so we need to pull up PragerU and demonetize ourselves. That's just a perfect example of like Maddie versus Know Nothing. Where these are my chats. I don't want this. Is this the right one? Here we go. I mean, call me a softie, but I would still like to get that World War I version of Hitler some therapy. I'm still over here trying to talk to self-described Nazis. the part where he like tried to call me out for naming somebody else a Nazi. I'm like, no, that's literally what the dude calls himself. I'm sorry. Alright, we got our PragerU video up. Let's get our work document. I am definitely not going to go nearly as long as I did last night, guys. I hope not to be going too long. I've got, you know, my kid is passed out in the room, so I'm not going to try. I'm going to try not to disturb her sleep too much. There we go. Let's. What's that? I'm on earlier, quote unquote. It's not a very strong statement, I don't think. Shadow Wolf still here? Do I like Lady Gaga? I don't know that I have much of an opinion on Lady Gaga. I mean, the one thing I can say about Lady Gaga is Roma, Roma, Ma. But that's about it. Okay. Oh, they definitely already are. It's sick. Well, I'm proud of you, Shao. You get out there and you spread your love for Lady Gaga. I would leave Hitler alone because those behind him that would have taken his place did not have his glaring weaknesses that allowed for the Nazis' defeat. Well, I can't account for every person, but I can try to save every person. Try to get other Central Europeans some therapy. Okay, we got video is fascism, right or left? This is already an alarming question. This shouldn't be a point of contention. The fact that it's being framed this way is already a warning sign. Yes, you need to address nationalism. That is a problem. All right, let's turn off the music. And let's start our watch party. Now, this is a prime example of fair use. We are going to be dissecting this video as we watch it. So we are making something transformative out of this, which is one of the key test questions of a fair use case. Not everything that you see somebody do as they're viewing someone else's content is fair use, but we are going to be dissecting this video for its truth claims. We are going to be pausing and discussing. We're going to be taking notes, and we are going to be arguing against it. Fair use, prime example.
He's a fascist. For decades...
All right, red flag number 1, Dinesh D'Souza. Anyway.
This has been a favorite smear of the left aimed at those on the right. Every Republican president, for that matter, virtually every Republican, since the 1970s...
Okay. So let's, first off, let's point out, do you think AI training is fair use? Do I think AI training is fair use? I don't think so in itself. I would need to review my fair use tests. But the problem is that it is not forthcoming with its use of content to... Boy, that's hard. I have a hard time always arguing that like AI art is theft. People love to claim, well, they didn't have my consent to use my art as a training model for it to develop its own art. So it is taking a piece of my work, uncredited, to make more art, quote unquote art, make products. And I just sit there and go, well, yeah, that's what art is. That's literally how all humans do art. We take inspiration from other people's work. We learn from other people's work. Every person's art is an incorporation of all of the inputs that they've received socially. Evil alien robot, you're wrong. We'll get to it. So I first want to start with this claim. I'm just going to paraphrase it. Let's make sure we're putting everything in quotes that he is unofficially putting in quotes every time he says it. The left loves to use fascist as an insult against the right. True. There is a reason for that, and that's because the left-right dichotomy historically is about hierarchies. Where it comes from in French politics, it's about whether they wanted to uphold or tear down the traditional aristocracy. So the left, in a word, is about egalitarianism, and the right, in a word, is about hierarchy. And now I don't like to characterize the right that way, because I don't think the right likes to characterize themselves that way. I think it is like the classical division of egalitarianism versus hierarchy, I think, is a already pro-left framing. And it wouldn't have been back then, but we already have such a distaste for hierarchy. In the modern age, we are built on liberalism, that we are trained from the get-go to dislike hierarchy as like a thing to uphold, a thing to promote. So it's already pro-left, but just factually, like most leftist things, but I still like to give some level of credence to the right's own framing of how they promote things. And so I think it's less getting there, shall. I think it's less has less implied negativity to it to say that the right is pro propriety, which is what a lot of right arguments boil down to. They may not outright say this is a hierarchy and we defend it, but they will claim this is a value, we have to uphold it. They don't disagree with that, as far as I can tell. They think it is a proper value to uphold. So, true left supports egalitarianism. My God, I can't. Right supports hierarchies, propriety. Now, that means that the left, from their focal point, is facing political opposition against egalitarianism. And that means, and the other thing that the left is afraid of is that the right has a tendency to try to force viewpoints through the state. The left, part of egalitarianism is pluralism. So the left supports people being allowed to maintain whatever viewpoint they want to carry out acts as they would, so long as they don't cause someone else harm. Now, not only are they afraid of people having the opinion that they shouldn't be equal, they shouldn't support egalitarianism, the right is afraid of that being a crackdown by the state. And that's a real threat. So the left does panic about fascism, about the state cracking down against egalitarianism with state power. So they do have a tendency to lean toward seeing fascism when it isn't there, because they are wary. Now, egalitarianism, it means the equal treatment under the laws and the systems. Nobody should be treated more poorly by the state because of an immutable characteristic. Or, in most cases, even mutable characteristics, so long as those mutable characteristics don't cause harm to others. Now, this is a problem. It is, I would say, it is justified, but it is also a problem, because you get Boy Who Cried Wolf. And can anybody point out to me the story with the problem of the Boy Who Cried Wolf? I'm sorry to treat you guys like elementary schoolers, but this is kind of important to a discussion on fascism. Shadow Wolf? The wolves finally showed up. That's right. And this leads me to the important point. When the wolf arrives, the fact that people are using fascist as a claim/insult does not invalidate the claim of fascism. So by the time we are here, this can no longer be allowed to matter. We can't worry about this anymore. Yes, the left may overcall fascism, but you can't use that as an excuse to ignore every call of fascism. The right loves to raise this as a point against talking about fascist policy. But it's not. It's not a point against calling out fascist policy. It has been wrong in the past, but it being wrong in the past cannot be in any way associated with whether or not it's right or wrong now. We're going to get there too. Doing this bit by bit. So.
70s has been called a fascist, now more than ever.
Now more than ever. The right is being called fascist now more than ever. Like, we're looking at a 5-minute video, and as much as I am breaking it down little bit by little bit, I think it's worth doing, and we're going to get through it. It's a 5-minute video. Here we got... I'll fix it in a second. I'll put this to the audience. Does anybody have any response to this claim? Is it justified? Is it unjustified? Is there a reason now more than ever, or is it just an overactive left? Shao, are you saying Lady Gaga is the Antifa? I'm Antifa too. I must be Lady Gaga. This part right here. The right is being called fascist now more than ever. Is there any justification, lack of justification? You can't read that? Is it too small? Does that work? Is my screen too crowded with bullshit? I'm so cluttered. I like having an active audience here, especially if I've got an audience. All right, Shadow Wolf. We're having a law class here. Just open floor. Socratic method. Both justified and overreactive. It's my assumption of what you're saying. Fascist right. More active online. The entire right is lumped with them the same way the right goes. The entire left is all a bunch of communists. Okay. What I haven't seen is people getting too upset about being called fascist. They get lumped in with open fascists because they support the same system. Yeah, see, there's my first response to Shadow Wolf. Here's the problem. The left can identify certain tendencies or policies that are fascist, and we're going to get there, I promise. We're going to get there when it comes to MAGA-ism. But there isn't a communist political movement amongst the established left. That doesn't exist. So if the left is thinking that the mainstream movement of the political right is fascist, now we have a very different problem than when the like mainstream right calls mainstream left communist, because there is zero justification there. There's nothing communist about the mainstream political left. But I think more importantly, you did hit a very important note, Shadow Wolf, and yes, fascists, more politically active. Fascists are also more politically powerful. Oh. Look at the Young Conservatives. That's the name of the group, right? But even more striking is unitary executive theory. This was not mainstream back in the day. 20 years ago, this was not mainstream. It has been consistently gaining more momentum thanks to the Heritage Foundation. Thanks to, I'm not going to remember their name. I'm going to stop trying. But unitary executive theory has been gaining more and more traction amongst the political right. People tend to think like this is a normal thing to assume, that the president, the executive branch, is meant to have all of its executive power, all of its executive decision making isolated behind one person. And that is even more alarming when you take it away from that very textual reading of it and look to how it effectively applies. The scariest thing about it, Shadow Wolf, is when you apply unitary executive theory to the administrative state. Now, for those unfamiliar with how the administrative state works, the administrative state is a relatively new invention, and it is a product of modernity. Congress cannot be relied upon to make law about things that require specialized knowledge. They are just regular lawmakers. They're regular people. They're supposed to be regular people. They're supposed to come from the common stock. We're supposed to support our own in representing us. Now, that means that, just from a baseline, like, law is supposed to touch literally every part of our lives. How are you supposed to have somebody who's an expert on all of those parts of our lives? You're supposed to have an expert on law, on science. I guess science is way too broad of a term, because, like, the administrative state touches on so many branches of science. Take, for instance, virology. Take, for instance, pollution. It's impossible for lawmakers to handle that on their own, at least under our current mechanisms. And maybe if we had a constitutional convention, we would need to reanalyze how we make law when so much of modernity relies on specialized knowledge. Now, Congress, we have gone through decades of lawmaking to determine how this works. Congress is able to create offices. Congress can create an office and imbue that office with the power to make law. It's not statutory law. It doesn't have the power of statutory law, but it has the power of law so long as it does not conflict with statutory law. That's where regulations come from. Now, the absolutely insane thing about the administrative state, about agencies, is agencies have lawmaking functions. They have judicial functions, because they have to have the power to make determinations as to whether someone has violated regulatory law. So they have judicial functions too. And then on top of all that, they also have executive function. They are required to have the mechanisms in place to enforce their regulations. The people who are supporting unitary executive theory, I was just about to get there because now we've come to the complicated part. Who runs agencies? You have a Congress who has invented a form of government. And that form of government is supposed to have legislative, judicial, and executive power. Who runs it? Technically, we don't have a mechanism in the Constitution to determine like a special set of rules for the administrative state. And I think if we were to rewrite our Constitution, we would need to fucking do something about that. But technically, currently, because it needs somebody to operate it, these agencies have to sit under the executive branch. Now, the Constitution gives the president the authority to appoint all necessary people for like executive functions, to fill those offices. And even more fun, no one is technically given the removal power under the Constitution. It's not in there. No one is given the power to remove people from offices other than through like impeachment. Now, that was read into the Constitution by the Supreme Court over a century. Like it was talked about on the floor of Congress before the 19th century, and then it was determined by law, by judicial law, by the Supreme Court, I think early in the 20th century. So there's a bunch of history there. And it's assumed that the president has removal power along with appointment power. If somebody has to serve at the pleasure of the president, then they also can be removed at the pleasure of the president. Now, when Congress invented agencies, sometimes Congress wanted to say, yes, but the president can't touch this. This is meant to be an independent agency, which makes a lot of fucking sense considering that we have given those agencies the power of lawmaking, of judicial decision-making, and of executing the law. Why would you give the president the power to remove whoever they wanted from that so that they can then put whoever they want in charge of it? That is incredibly anti-American. If you look at what American values are, like if you go back to what did we found this all on, probably in the number one slot is a distrust of executive power. That should be number one on your chart of like American values. So anytime somebody wants to believe in a powerful executive, that's an un-American person. I think it was enacted during Andrew Jackson's presidency when he made all his friends judges and cabinet members and almost bankrupted the entire country. After that, the Senate gained the power to approve presidential appointees. No, the power of the Senate to approve presidential appointees is in the Constitution. Presidential appointments are with the advice and consent of the Senate. That's in the Constitution, like the base Constitution. It's the removal power that's in question. Now, so with these independent agencies, Congress came up with a system that was like for cause removal. In the case of these independent agencies, the president has to give cause for who can be removed. And in some cases, like explicit causes are given by Congress. And this was found to be constitutional way back in the early 20th century, or mid 20th century. Makes sense. You can't give the president all that power. No one man should have all that power, if I'm to quote American music. Unitary executive theory says, well, one of the primary things in Article 2 of the Constitution is it says all executive power shall be vested in the president. Sure, that's fine. But if you give the president all power over agencies, all power over who gets to sit in those offices, then you're not just confining executive power to the president. You are also giving the president lawmaking and judicial power. That's why unitary executive theory is such a big problem. You are, like, I'll be clear. Congress has abdicated a lot of its lawmaking responsibility by putting so much lawmaking power in agencies. But when Congress abdicates that power, it cannot be picked up by the president. That is the makings of a terrifying situation. Thank you, Shadow Wolf. There we go. Now you see the problem. Now let me also point out to you that PragerU loves the unitary executive theory. So immediately, you should not trust them. Someone who believes in an empowered executive does not have your best interests in mind. No one who believes in an empowered executive has your best interests in mind. You should never trust such a person. Oh, forgive me, Maddie. Forgive me. I think once we get into the meat of it, there won't be as many places to pause, but we have to get our groundwork. No shit. My boyfriend's testicles were bitten off by a camel recently. Should I marry him when he wakes up from his coma, or marry his identical twin brother whose testicles are in pretty good shape? I think I can just remove this person. Bye, Tarot Destroyer. That was a worthwhile comment in the YouTube chat. Bear in mind, this will be the closest I've ever looked at them. Mostly, they just popped up on my YouTube feed. Well, see, that's why we're here today, Shadow Wolf. This is why I come in with a positive attitude about these things. This is why I'm willing to engage with every single, like, claim that we make, because we need to be willing to accept that we know nothing, and in that be willing to learn and not just absorb. If we're just putting on PragerU videos and just leaving them on in the background, that all we're doing is absorbing, and it becomes so easy to just not process. And like, they're also extremely tricky, as we're about to see. They're extremely tricky. So we can't turn our brains off to absorb this content. yeah, YouTube chat's kind of crazy. Search for IQ's holding it down for us, though. They soft pedal right-wing videos and shorts that suck people down into the algorithm. And Shadow Wolf, one of the things that I want to do with my Appeal to the Right series, which is not the first Appeal to the Right video that we're going to be focusing on, / videos we're going to be focusing on, is I want to explain to right-wing voters the amount of wordplay war that is played on them by their own representatives. They associate ideas with words, and then they ambiguate the words so that they can group different ideas together under the same umbrella, and then they treat those things under the same umbrella as equal. So they dishonestly broaden words to the point where they don't really have meaning. Tarot Destroyer's back again. Oh. Sorry to hear that, Tarot Destroyer. Come back again. Trolls are out. I have a book for you to read if you're into it. It's a super quick read. I don't know who you're talking to, Maddie, but you are always welcome to give your recommendations. Okay, back to the PragerU video. Oh, let me finish this quote. Timothy Snyder again, huh? Okay,
This
we're
label
about to
is
see some
based on the
wordplay.
idea that fascism is a phenomenon of the political right. The left says it is, and some self-styled white supremacists and neo-Nazis embrace the label.
I wonder why that is. Like, it's almost like if somebody's willing to be the most disgusting version of themselves, maybe trust their own labels. Maybe not. That's not a good thing, because like Nazis will claim both being socialist and being far right. So it is hard to trust them. They're not honest with language either. So ignore me. It's not good to trust them ever.
But are they correct?
Use
To answer
objectivism.
this question, we have to ask what fascism really means.
Now we're already playing a trick. He has skipped over what is the left and what is the right. Now, let's go back to my notes real quick. Now, we already addressed this, but I did want to point it out as a separate comment. This is a wordplay game. It's not a wordplay game. It's just a different mental trick. So what they're doing here is they're not addressing what they mean when they say left and right, because they are relying on your preconceived notions. They are not going to address them, but they are going to use some word suggestions to link their claim to what your preconceived notions are, and it'll just inherently make sense. But the problem we're about to see is they are assuming you have heard and been raised with the idea that a large state, an empowered state, is a leftist concept, and that small government is a rightist concept. But if you ever actually examine that through the lens of what people promote, that is not true. The size of the government is not inherently a left or right concept. You have versions of both the left and the right that have small government and big government. The government can be entrusted with the project of promoting egalitarianism. I don't think that's a great thing to trust them with, especially when you're talking about a vanguard party. I greatly condemn the concept of a vanguard party. I don't think communism with a vanguard party is a functional concept. You can't trust people with power to give other people power. But the state can also be used to homogenize the subjects of the state. One example of a powerful state is a monarchy, and the monarchy is inherently anti-left. A monarchy is anti-egalitarianism. If we go back to the origins of the left and the right, being supportive of the classical aristocracy is pro-right. So, depending on what you're using the state for, a large state can be left or right. But that's immediately the trick they're going to. They are not going to talk about the qualities that make the right. They are just going to depend on your association of the right with small government. Evil alien robot, the worst part is, I bet they could. I bet they could. They could define left and right for you if they were pressed to do so. Um, they're genuinely dumb. I never like to assume that my enemies are dumb. Now, Trump, I've seen that demonstrated in so many ways, but he is not the entirety of who our enemy is. Aliana's in. What's going on, Aliana? We're watching some PragerU here. We're doing some actual fair use content on this channel. I'll give you my thought on this definition. Left prefers a strong federal government and more social programs run by an overarching group. Right prefers a strong local government and less social programs. But sides, I believe, like a strong military for defense, but the left would be less likely to advocate said military than the current federal government. That's just the version of rightism that you are used to. What you're talking about is conservatism, not rightism. Conservatism, at its core, is supposed to embrace a smaller federal government. But conservatism isn't the entirety of the right. Conservatism, most people forget, is a branch of right politics. MAGA is not conservative. MAGA is radical. Well, okay, all right, okay, all right. I just think it's an important factual point. It's a historical point. It is an academic point. If you look at academic definitions of left and right, the size of the government is not like a fundamental aspect of it. All right.
What is its underlying ideology? Where does it even come from? These are not easy questions to answer. We know the name of the philosopher of capitalism, Adam Smith. We know the name of the philosopher of Marxism, Karl Marx. But who's the philosopher of fascism? Yes, exactly.
This is wild.
You don't know. Don't feel bad, almost no one knows. This is not because he doesn't exist, but because historians, most of whom are on the political left, had to erase him from history in order to avoid confronting fascism's actual beliefs.
This is wild. I don't know how you can watch this video and not get red flags from this. Yeah, we are doing the Prager video, Light Spectre. I said I would. It's like, we know this, we don't know this. Like, what kind of educator are you? I know, right? Okay, so first off, claim that almost no one knows who, oh God, what's his name? Giovanni Gentile is. And then let's do the quote. Historians, most of whom are on the political left, had to erase him from history in order to avoid confronting fascism's actual beliefs. So we're going to be talking about somebody that, like, Mussolini's governmental system, like, reflected the philosophy of this guy. They're talking about Giovanni Gentile. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. Oh, gotta scroll. Okay. No one? What kind of bullshit is this? You think that people who research, like, political history, people who research political philosophy, don't know who Giovanni Gentile is, this is meant to rile up the uneducated person watching the video. That's entirely what that statement is intended to do. And keep in mind, the person in the video, or the person watching the video, doesn't know who Karl Marx is. They don't know what Marxism is. They think Marxism bad, but they have no idea what it means. So is the person watching the video supposed to know who Giovanni Gentile is? And maybe there's a reason why, when we compare Adam Smith and Karl Marx to Giovanni Gentile, we get kind of a different result. Is that because no one is out here on a grand platform promoting the philosophy of Giovanni Gentile? People still promote Marxism. Of course we know who Karl Marx is. It also sounds foreign. Yeah, I caught that one too. I had heard of him before this, but I didn't know he was associated with fascism like this. I honestly cannot remember where I heard of him before. A stroke affected some of my memory. Yeah, but like, more importantly is this is meant to rile you up. This is conspiratorial language. It's meant to say, you don't know, and there's a reason why you don't know. Why do you not know? Now let's get into the next conspiracy. Academics are against you. Okay. So, next one is historians, political left. Now, this is news to no one. The more educated you are, the more likely you are to be politically left. And if you know anything about how higher education works, how the scientific method works, how I don't know what the system they have for it. Like, I don't know if there is a name for it, but like historical review, like there are academics who review other historian academics' work. The systems that they have in place are designed to remove and condemn like just straight like fabricated opinion, unjustified statements. These people devote their lives to finding facts and deriving models out of facts. Historians make models. I don't know if they view it that way, but that's what they do. Just like scientists do. They go, based on the knowledge that we've got, this is the most predictive model we have that we could say, I think things were this way. And then if we do more research, find more facts, find more documents, find more historical record, find more archaeological finds, our current model should be able to predict what we would expect to find there. Historians have models. So when you say historians are overwhelmingly politically left, that isn't an insult to the left. That isn't an indication of a conspiracy. That is an indication that the left goes through greater rigor in reviewing their facts. That's all that is. What you are about to talk about is why I believed Maddie so readily. It is my opinion that the US media wishes to portray the average American as burger-eating dumb. That they want us to have an anti-intellectual bias so we do not question things, and the academics are against you as part of that. Oh, look, they hid facts because they think you are too dumb to find them. Right, that is not what they do. If they hide facts, then they can't, like, be celebrated in their own field. They have to put the facts out there, or their findings will not be justified. They will be failures in their own field. This holds up, but not out of conspiracy. Academia requires rigor. The left tends to hold their views up to a more rigorous lens. Yeah. Next. Erase him from history. This goes back up to no one knows him, but this is the fill in the blank section where it's like, no one knows him. Why do we not know him? Well, historians are mostly on the political left, so let's fill in the blank. If most of the left, or if most historians are on the political left, and no one knows who Giovanni Gentile is, why is that true? It must be because they erased him from history. Except all of them know who he is. And if anyone erased him from history, it was people not supporting fascism. Amazing. That in the video she sent me prove that PragerU was a corporation, not an actual... Oh my god, Shadow Wolf. This is not meant to, like, condemn you in any way. Did you actually think that PragerU was a university? Oh, yeah, you followed that up, which you are so sad to admit you did not know. Oh my god, that's terrifying. Shadow Wolf, that's genuinely terrifying. That is the design, but I didn't, like, part of my brain, like, protected me from that conclusion that people actually believed them saying that they're a university. Matt, the U is short for university, but they were required by law, if I remember correctly, to stop calling themselves a university. I think they initially did say Prager University. Let's look at that real quick. The Prager University Foundation, known as PragerU, is an American 501c3, gross, creates content. They're not even subject to taxes. Despite the name including the word university, it is not an academic institution and does not confer degrees. Let's look down at criticism. There's got to be a case in here somewhere. Shadow Wolf, are you aware that PragerU makes the argument that it was better to enslave natives and Africans? Like, oof, I don't want to overstep. I'm pretty sure the Columbus video says that it was better to enslave the native peoples because what were they going to do? Kill them all? Is that better? That's in a kids video. That's PragerU Kids. Good God. According to Joseph McCarthy of the Weather Channel, oh, look at that. In the 2016 video, Fossil Fuels, Greenest Energy, fossil fuel proponent Alex Epstein promotes misinformation about climate change, including false and misleading claims. Paleoconservative scholar Paul Gottfried, who has written on fascism, criticized a PragerU video hosted by Dinesh D'Souza, which stated that fascism was a left-wing ideology. Hey, look, that's the one where don't spoil. Whiteness and conservatism are under attack. Okay, well, hold on. Whiteness and conservatism are under attack. Like, what do you mean by whiteness in this case? Because the academic concept of whiteness should be under attack. That's a good thing, to attack the academic concept of whiteness, which is not the same thing as white people. which, again, the left, and this time I'll accuse academia, very bad at messaging. So bad at messaging. Y'all, please. Please, like, think about, what if somebody talked about my theory and what I name my theory on a broader scale? Jesus. Has there not been a PragerU case? Ninth Circuit upheld the dismissal of PragerU's lawsuit against YouTube, ruled that YouTube is a private forum, not a public one, and therefore its content moderation doesn't violate First Amendment rights. Well, damn, I guess I'm wrong about them being told they couldn't use the name university. That may have been like specific states. I know some states say you can't use university in your name if you are not an accredited institution. So that might be all I'm talking about. Okay. To avoid confronting fascism's actual beliefs, and I guess it's time that we get there.
So let me introduce him to you. His name is Giovanni Gentile. Born in 1875, he was one of the world's most influential philosophers in the first half of the 20th century. Gentile believed that there were two diametrically opposed types of democracy. One is liberal democracy, such as that of the United States, which Gentile dismisses as individualistic, too centered on liberty and personal rights, and therefore selfish.
Holy shit. Well, Aliana, more specifically, what we have established here is, without even explaining what Giovanni Gentile supports, what we know Giovanni Gentile condemns is left-wing philosophy. Liberty and personal rights, meaning for everyone. If you are to have liberty, truly have liberty, you would have to have liberty in the same way that everyone else has liberty. This is an egalitarian value. Personal rights is an egalitarian value. Personal rights means that the state is not able to overpower you in your exercise of your personal freedom. Personal rights, people don't tend to look at it this way. Personal rights are a guarantee of pluralism. If you have a personal right, so does someone else that isn't like you, unless the state refuses it to them. So if we are to have actual personal rights, if we were to have actual liberty, that is egalitarianism, that is leftism.
The other, the one Gentile recommends, is true democracy, in which individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state.
Now, this is fun, because this is something that I actually... Stop. Okay. This is something that I actually talked about with our Nazi friend on the channel. Not Super Jesus. Oh, the guy who goes by the Bad Goy. He was of the opinion that if you are to, like, truly support a democratic view, then you are supposed to give the willpower over to the majority, and then the majority can decide to disempower, to disenfranchise, to destate anyone they want to. And yes, if you go for pure democracy, that is what you end up with. But that would not be a leftist ideal. If you are able to just destate people because the majority says so, that's not egalitarianism. That's not pluralist. That's why we have constitutional rights. That's why Gentile doesn't like personal rights.
Like his philosophical...
And just before I continue, this is why it's so important to have minority rights, because every single one of us is a minority. We are all minorities in our own system. It's just a matter of who draws the lines. There is something about you that makes you different from the majority of people, and you can always be cut out. If nothing else, you are a minority in lacking the qualities of some other minority group. Once you get that low, like, I'm not a member of this class or this class or this class or this class, I'm a member of the majority in all these cases. Well, guess what? You are now in a minority. Carl Schmitt. No, who's Carl Schmitt? Me, the uneducated one. The person who just thinks a lot and has never read very much. I know, I'm sorry, Maddie. I told you, I didn't even start reading books casually until last year after I got Adderall. Happy to say I don't know stuff, but also happy to learn.
Philosophical mentor Karl Marx, Gentile wanted to create a community that resembles the family, a community where we are all in this together.
Oh boy. Hold on, let's back this up slightly.
Gentile wanted individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state. Like his philosophical mentor Karl Marx, Gentile wanted to create a community that resembles the family, a community where we are all in this together.
Jesus Christ. What the fuck? Go for it, Shadow Wolf. Karl Marx is German. Was German. He's nothing now. No state can claim Hades. I mean, I'm not even going to analyze the claim that he was his mentor. It's not like it matters. Let's keep this rolling.
It's easy to see the attraction of this idea. Indeed, it remains a common rhetorical theme of the left.
Ah. Jesus. There we go. Rhetorical, what does he say? Theme.
For example, at the 1984 convention...
Okay, so we'll stop it there. And we're about to see, this is just lining up the dishonesty that's to come. I mean, yeah, when you had Russia that was in the throes of a political upheaval, and they were still trying to recover from economic instability after overthrowing the... Oh no, I walked myself into it. The Romanovs. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be socialist / communist fervor. The working class was overthrowing things, and then they entrusted everything to a vanguard party, and see what happens when you give everything over to a vanguard party. Nothing good. You feel like you are not even the most gaslit now? What do you mean? Okay. So here we Here we go with the conflation. Welcome to the right's war of words. Right, but it continued for decades. Like, it was constant upheaval. What was I saying? Oh, we are equating two extremely different things through the most bare thread. The idea that we are all like family and we are all in this together. The problem is, even if Marx and Gentile use these exact words, we have already demonstrated that they meant vastly different things. I feel like I missed like a bit of a quote. Maybe it's still coming up, where he says that like Gentile believed that the individual was to be subsumed by the state. Like there was to be no more individual. There was only subservience to the state. You were meant to be a cog in the state. You were meant to represent the values of the state. Marx did not believe that. Marx was very much about the empowerment of the worker, the empowerment of the laborer over the state, because the state had a classic role in removing of exploiting the worker. Especially with the bourgeoisie, the state was an arm of the bourgeoisie to exploit the worker. So Marx believed in empowering individuals to have more fulfilling lives outside of work, to be individuals. Gentile is expressed in this video to be opposed to that idea.
Invention of the Democratic Party, the governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, likened America to an extended family, where, through the government, people all take care of each other.
Gentile believed, again, that there was to be the state ideal, the state values, and everyone was required to reflect those state values. Saying America is like an extended family, now we have just looped the thread of modern liberalism, modern leftism, through this idea that they tied Marx to Gentile with, which was already a functionally incorrect comparison. And now we have through that tied modern liberalism to fascist ideology. But the idea of America being like an extended family where we take care of each other through the government, that isn't fascist. That is not a mandate by the state that all people be subsumed in their individuality into the ideology and values of the state. This is still a pluralist idea. As long as it is pluralist, it isn't fascist by definition. Shadow Wolf is wholly on board now. I love it, Shadow Wolf. I love it. All right, I'll say was anti-pluralist. Cuomo was expressing pluralist ideology. How long is the video? How much left do we have? We've got 3 minutes left of the video. Maybe I can let it run more. I do have definitely one more quote I want to pause and type out for sure. Maddie won this hours ago. I looked into it and said they won after watching that. Right, but I'll give Maddie the credit. Way to go, Maddie. You killed it. I want to give myself a little bit of credit and say it's valuable to go through a video like this, claim by claim, and see how they do it. Light Spectre on YouTube chat says, it's interesting that the Prager content is factual, but delivered in such a weird, subtle, bias way. Right? It's this dishonest framing, tying ideas together. Thanks, Shadow Wolf. I love that. I love to hear that. And I love that you put it as you learned a lot with me. That's my goal. We are learning together. I don't want to hold a position of teacher, just like somebody that you can learn to learn along with. Because I didn't watch this video before today. I saw you share PragerU and go, oh, fuck. It's a shame that ADHD isn't up in here also watching this content with us, because ADHD was very opinionated in the Discord chat also. They know exactly how to frame these things. They are professional propagandists.
Things changed. 30 years later, the slogan of the 2012 Democratic Party convention was, "The government is the only thing we all belong to."
Oh, God. To this, I just want to say, I'm sorry. Is this not an American value? Isn't this what the people is? Has PragerU really just worked its way around to demonizing a central core American value in trying to tie it to the claim that we are all like a family, and that's what Gentile believes? Oh boy. And I realize now that Shao, I don't know if Shao is even here anymore. We haven't even gotten around to a definition of fascism. So let's pause. Say, what is fascism anyway? So fascism is complicated in what it is. There is the ideology achieved, or ideology pursued. There is the mechanism sought, and there is the pathway to support. All of these things are required to get a full understanding of. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Love the participation. Too far. There we go. So you can get yourself that, like, the debaters love to go to the 14 points, the 14 pillars of fascism. 14 pillars of fascism is just a broader way to get down to the nitty gritty of explaining all of these things, but we can think of it more simply, at least to get a directional idea of what fascism is. And once we get down to the nitty gritty, then maybe we can, like, argue over, like, do we need to get better definitions for these areas. But the ideology pursued by fascism is a propriety mandate. Those that seek, those who have a fascist ideology have a belief of what is proper, what should be done, what values should be upheld, and these need to be carried out by everyone. A failure to support the ideals are if not a state crime, is a moral crime. It needs to be condemned by society that people don't support these values. Now, lots of people. All right, have a good night, Light Spectre. People will always point out, like the left, the left also wants to pursue their values, but the left would quickly jump to, I only want people to be supported in the areas that are factually provable, like, not supported. I only think that the state should be involved in promoting things that are factually supported. Beyond that, beyond what's factually supported, we can go to the value of what ceases harm the most, and that would still be factually supported. You could demonstrate harm. And then beyond that, allow the freedom to do whatever. Allow the freedom to do whatever, so long as it does not create demonstrable harm to someone else. And even in those cases, there's a weighing mechanism, because we have to allow for freedom, because ceasing freedom is its own kind of harm. But the right takes things like, I'm not going to strictly say religious, but things like religious values, things that are not demonstrably harmful to anyone. We say, like, we want to allow gay marriage on the left. A fascist ideology could say, no gay marriage, because it is foul. That is a sense of propriety. It is not based on, like, a demonstrable harm. It's just what is proper, and we are going to enforce it. Some religious beliefs are very harmful. But we also believe that people participate in religious beliefs voluntarily. I don't agree with that entirely. I've dealt with a cult in my personal life, so I know that there are definitely mechanisms in place to force people to do things that are religious without what I would call voluntary action. But it's kind of a, like, at least in American history, something that we have to uphold, that the idea that what one practices in one's own mind is voluntary, and they have to be allowed to do that. Sure, Shadow Wolf, you're going to trigger me to start saying, like, every Christian thinks every other Christian is wrong, but anyway, the right wants to take things that are not demonstrable and force other people to uphold them. Then the mechanism sought is a vastly empowered state in terms of what the state can do, what the state can reach. You know, if we're going to stick on religion, like, America has banned, like, was it religious tests or religious oaths for public office holders, a fascist movement might try to undo that, require that like office holders in the government take religious vows. And then the state also requires that every member of society pay a tax to support the church. That was outlawed in America from the very beginning. Attaway, Shadow Wolf. Way to own being wrong. Being wrong is great. Prayer in school is the easy one. Forcing my kid to say under God. That is a fascist ideology. That is a fascist practice of the government. That is not to say that our government is fascist, which is another thing that we have to differentiate here. When people call MAGA people fascist, they are not saying they belong to a state that is effectively fascist. They are saying they belong to a fascist movement, and the fascist movement pursues fascist motivations. The people who forced Bible curriculum into Texas schools, fascists. And then the pathway to support is where it gets really complicated. And this is just getting down to, do we really need to differentiate between fascism and other forms of authoritarianism? But fine. Fascism specifically gets into mythologizing, nationalism, militarism, populism. These are the major factors that go into fascism. They create a state mythology talking about how the state is better than everyone else, and they are better than everyone else for a mythologized reason. It gets circular. They believe in the power that the state can demonstrate, because something about power makes us feel safer and more secure, and so it lets us trust in the state more. And then populism is like, we drive this grassroots fervor to like overthrow the old establishment. The state doesn't have our interests in mind. We need to represent the people versus the state. And when you frame things that way, you allow the people to give their power over to someone who does not want to represent their power. Faux populism. It's mythologized populism. The mythologizing, I think, is the key to fascism. Riddle me this. Why is a moment of silence as a specific time of day where kids can silently do anything from meditate, pray, or homework a bad thing? Nothing organized except that for this long at this time we'll be silent to respect those that do have those beliefs. I don't have any issue with a moment of silence. I have a very vague issue with a moment of silence in the fact that it's meant to be a way to sneak in prayer in school. And by that I mean pressure for prayer in school, or otherizing of kids that do their moment of silence in a different way. But as long as the school is not misusing the moment of silence, as long as it's done correctly, then I don't see anything wrong with it. Right, Umberto Eco. And I like to try to keep things simpler than Umberto Eco, because people's eyes glaze over. Oh, I see what you mean. I got you. I just wish that they would stop making my kid say, well, not that they're making her, but pressuring her to say under God at school. And I wish they would stop making her pledge allegiance to the flag. I think pledging allegiance to the flag is anti-American as hell. I think we could take a moment each day to recognize the state's duty to us and not our duty to the state. Because we make the state. Part of the American project is that the state is an instrument of our power. So what allegiance do we owe to it? It owes allegiance to us.
They might as well have been quoting Gentile.
I agree, D'Souza. That's the face I'm making right now. Am I a serious person? Can people take me seriously? I hope people take me seriously. I don't feel very serious right now. Didn't he make, was it 2000 Mules? Was that his documentary? What a hack.
Now remember, Gentile was a man of the left. He was a committed socialist.
I'm sorry, what? Selective populism. The people, conceived monolithically, have a common will distinct from and superior to the viewpoint of any individual. As no mass of people can ever be truly unanimous, the leader holds himself out as the interpreter of the popular will. Fascists use this concept to delegitimize democratic institutions they accuse of no longer representing the voice of the people. Yeah. It's just
For
a 5-minute
Gentile,
video.
fascism is a form of socialism. Indeed, its most workable form.
I think we can just let it run.
While
at
the
this point.
socialism of
Well, no, we
Marx
can't just let it run,
mobilizes
that's
people
not
on
fair
the
use.
basis of class, fascism mobilizes people by appealing to their national identity as well.
So are you saying that Gentile's form of socialism isn't egalitarian? Are you saying that Gentile's form of socialism justifies a hierarchy?
Well as their class. Fascists are socialists with a national identity. German fascists in the 1930s were called Nazis, basically a contraction.
They also weren't socialists. This is a point that I got into with our local Nazi. He claimed that his core ideal, which was something that I forgot to get into with Tim last night. There are certain questions that I like to start off with, and I got too excited about having a voice chat call, so I didn't get into it. But I like to ask people what their core ideal is. And for our local Nazi, he said that his core ideal was socialism. Fascism is socialism with national identity. Yeah, I mean, the whole claim here is just that fascism is big state, and big state is left, so fascism is left, and that's just all kinds of wrong. But the guy was saying that is what was said, Maddie. You heard it correctly. Or that Gentile, who is the father of fascism, was a socialist, and he believed in socialism with a national identity. That's at least what was said. They may have exactly said what you said. But our Nazi, at the end of our conversation, I got to the point where I was like, you realize that a national socialist is just a bad socialist, right? Because with socialism, like, you believe, and we touched on this, I got him to agree to this statement, that you believe that with collective power, that people can get greater benefit out of collectivizing that power than they could get on their own. And that is the greatest benefit and the greatest ideal of socialism. And by becoming a national socialist, you are cutting out people who want to add to the collective power. So you are just shooting yourself in the foot for no reason at all by being a national socialist. So the concept of national socialism is itself just propaganda. It is a way of justifying nationalism. It is a way of justifying fascism. It is not real. It is not a real form of socialism.
Of the term National Socialist. For Gentile, all private action should be oriented to serve society. There's no distinction between the private interest and the public interest, correct?
To serve society, but what society? Not a pluralist society, but society as the state, as the determiner of what is proper, believes should be served. These are different concepts. These do not all fall on the left. This is that no true Nazi setup that I hear from a lot of hyper right-wing types. I'm not sure I'm familiar with the no true Nazi setup.
Correctly understood, the two are identical. And
Correctly understood, the two are identical. I'm gonna cry.
who is the administrative arm of society? It's none other than the state. Consequently, to submit.
The administrative arm of society is a very interesting way to frame that, considering like what we just went back over again. Right, but so in the new, sorry, Maddie, in the no true Nazi setup, they are saying that what? That a National Socialist who would choose the nationalism over the socialism is not shooting themselves in the foot. They are not doing it right. I don't know how to even figure that out. But sorry, what was I saying right here?
State.
The administrative arm of society is the state. This is not true under Gentile's view. Under Gentile's view, the state is the determiner of society. The state is the one that decides what society is, and everyone must conform. Yeah, I know they think National Socialism is actually left-wing because they think socialism is left-wing, but they don't realize that they don't believe in socialism.
Consequently, to submit to society is to submit to the state, not just in economic matters, but in all matters. Since everything is political, the state gets to tell everyone how to think and what to do. It was another Italian, Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy from 1922 to 1943, who turned Gentile's words into action. In his Dottrina del Fascismo, one of the doctrinal statements of early fascism, Mussolini wrote, "All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state." He was.
And so this is the point that Maddie was getting to, where it's like faux populism. It is the selective populism. This whole paragraph Maddie wrote, where the fascist leader calls themselves the voice, the interpreter of the will of the people. So the state, in claiming to be a voice of the people, becomes the voice without the people, and the people have to adhere to the voice. Well, I meant that you posted in chat. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal credit from Umberto Eco.
Was merely paraphrasing Gentile. The Italian philosopher is now lost in obscurity, but his philosophy could not be.
Hold on, I thought he was erased, not lost. Is he erased or lost? Did someone get rid of him?
More relevant because it closely parallels that of the modern left. Gentile's work speaks directly to progressives who champion the centralized state. Here in America, the left has vastly expanded state control over the private sector, from healthcare to banking, from education to energy. This state-directed capitalism is precisely what German and Italian fascists.
Jesus Christ. God. I didn't catch the anti-Semitism, but to say that the modern left ideology is exactly the state-directed capitalism that the German and Italian fascists implemented. That's wild. That's just a wild, gross statement.
Implemented in the 1930s.
I feel like we lost Shadow Wolf at this
Leftists
point.
can't acknowledge their man Gentile because that would undermine their attempt to bind conservatism to fascism.
All areas that need capitalism as far from them as possible. Hell yeah, Shadow Wolf. That's right. Well, with Shadow Wolf's prompt, let's go look at those categories again.
The progressives who champion the centralized state. Here in America, the left has vastly expanded state control over the private sector, from healthcare to banking, from education to energy.
This is what I'm talking about. Egalitarianism versus propriety. Why should banking not be regulated? Why what is the proper function of the health insurance industry? Why must they exist? State control over education? Wait, hold on. What? What are you talking about? What are you talking about when you talk about state control of education? Who's doing that? What? Who made colleges drop curriculum out of fear? That's crazy.
This state-directed capitalism is precisely what German and Italian fascists implemented in the 1930s. Leftists can't acknowledge their man Gentile.
I'm sure they know they're dog whistling that to some viewers. God, why won't my chair move there?
Because that would undermine their attempt to bind conservatism to fascism. Conservatism wants small government, so that
no. Fascism is a right-wing ideology. It is not conservatism. Conservatism isn't fascism. MAGA isn't conservatism. MAGA is fascism.
Individual liberty can flourish. The left, like Gentile, wants the opposite, to place the resources of the individual and industry in the service of a centralized state. To acknowledge Gentile is to acknowledge that fascism bears a deep kinship to the ideology of today's left. So they will keep Gentile where they've got him, dead.
Then why do I hate him so much? Why do I think he's so awful? That's odd. If only I could vocalize why I didn't like his ideology. If only. Is he not talking to us? What do you mean, Shadow Wolf? PragerU doesn't talk to the left. He's not talking to us. This content isn't for middle schoolers. This content is probably for 19-year-old men mostly. 19-year-old white men and people who could agree with them politically.
Buried and forgotten. But we should remember, or the ghost of fascism will continue to haunt us. I'm Dinesh D'Souza for Prager University.
I'm worried about the zombie of fascism haunting us, not the ghost of fascism. Ghosts aren't going to hurt me. The zombie might. Well, Shadow Wolf, I know you came into the stream having already changed your mind on PragerU, but thank you for giving us content to review. This has been worthwhile, and I might make another segment out of this. My segments go far too long because I love to just dig in too much. But I think I will make content out of last night's debate, and I will make content out of this instructive conversation. Thank you, Maddie. You are always so supportive. I appreciate you. Okay, well, I've already gone longer than I thought I would. So let's do the sign off. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you very much. Billy Blee, thank you for dropping in briefly. I hope I'm still being the kind of standard that you're looking for. Love to be standard for you. Do the PBS video. Maybe we'll look at the PBS video. You might need to remind me. Yeah. Maddie knows my tendencies. Sometimes I'll be like, I'm only going to do an hour today, guys. I always aim for at least an hour. So I'm just going to do an hour. And then I end up being on here for 4 hours. Okay. Anyway, I'm Know Nothing attorney. I know nothing, so you can too. Because it's only in embracing that we know nothing that we can actually learn anything. And we are always learning on this channel. We are always learning together. And I appreciate you guys for bringing learning to me. It's always great. That's right. That's right. I never know how much time is passing while streaming. I have no idea how that time passed last night. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, as always, I'm proud of you. I don't need to know you personally for that to be real. You deserve to hear it, and it's true. Because life is hard. It's always been hard, and it always will be hard. And the way you face every single day, the way you do, is remarkable. So stay remarkable, and I'll see y'all next time. And I'll let Maddie know if there's somebody that I should raid. Is there a name we should... Y'all can call me Know Nothing or Austin. I don't care. I love the branding, and I love the personalization, so both are great. Abraham Lincoln. Nah, he beat me to law school by a year. He went when he was 28. No, 27. I went when I was 28. Is Echo Mediaplex going right now? Hi, Seeker Maniac. Looks like you're not new here, but I don't recognize your name. Sorry that you came in late. Hopefully you can be here another time. Oh yeah. There's an Abraham Lincoln. Seeker Maniac coming in playing Dora the Explorer. Okay, let's find raid channel. Where's the search? There we go. I don't see Echo Mediaplex when I search. Why not? Why do I not? Wait. Echoplex Media. So. Maddie misleading me. Okay, we're going to raid Echoplex Media. Thanks, guys, for being here tonight. Peace out, y'all. See you tomorrow.